Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Business Studies 2022 Provincial Winter School Paper 1 session. These sessions will be broken up per question, and so I hope that you are ready and you have your booklet and your answers prepared. Let's get started. Look ahead and prepare for success. Most students spend time learning a topic and then they start looking at past papers or past paper questions. Flip that on its head and you'll get better results. Start by looking at real exam questions for that topic, maybe even attempting a few and making educated guesses wherever you need to. Then when you go back and you revise the topic, you'll have a much deeper sense of what you need to know and why, and how much you'll end up applying it in the exam. That'll help the topic go in much deeper, a bit like a farmer plowing his field before sowing his crops. So grade 12s, just as a reminder, when looking at a topic, please look at the topic and make your notes, and then try and find some old past paper questions and look for those common questions that usually occur every year or year in and year out. This will definitely be a better method or a recipe for you and your success. Let's get started with question 1. So in question 1, you have various term 1 and term 2 topics. And remember that here in question 1, we really need to focus on our exam answering skills. And so we really want to focus on how to navigate your way through each question. Because once you start looking at these question papers, you'll find that often you get quite confused. And if you use a method or a certain method, then it becomes much easier. Let's look at question 1. The first question, the aim of this act is to protect consumers against unfair, reckless lending by businesses. You have your options A, B, C, or D. Now remember grade 12s, one of the most important things that you need to remember here is that you may not give your examiner or your marker two answers here. The minute you do that, the answer is incorrect, even if your first response was correct. So remember grade 12s, one of the main things to remember with the multiple choice questions is that you must give us one clear answer. Please do not give us two answers. Now, usually when you look at your answers, you'll have 4 options or your possible options, and there will be 2 answers that are completely incorrect. Now, if you look at the question, the aim of this act is to protect consumers against unfair, reckless lending by businesses. You will see that all 4 options are at least act. So there's no definite or clear, unclear one. But when you start looking at the words in the question, and now I just need to get my pointer ready, or my highlighter, we see that they talk about lending. So, and we know that they are talking about consumers. So yeah, you would assume that something is being sold or bought, and they are talking about lending. So you know that there's maybe some credit involved. And so if we look at the Employment Equity Act, which is option B, and we look at Labor Relations Act, those 2 options are definitely not in the running. So we should scratch those options out. Now, if we look at the last 2 options that are left, we have A and C. So the one common mistake that learners make here is because they see the word consumers in the question, they assume that this is the Consumer Protection Act. But if you go through your core notes and you study your aim of both of these acts, you'll see that one of the aims of the National Credit Act is to protect consumers against unfair, reckless lending by businesses. And so the answer here is the National Credit Act. So the minute you start eliminating some of the options, the option or the answer, the actual answer becomes much clearer. Let's look at question 2 or 1.1.2. Businesses may lose many clients when their prices are increased because of an increase in the interest rate. This is an example of the factor as a pestle element. Now, if we look again at our 4 options, we have the technological aspect or element or component, the economic element, the physical element, and the environmental element. Now again, we have 4 options. Now let's look at our question. Businesses may lose many clients when their prices are increased. So we see that there's an increase in prices. And because of this increase, or this increase is taking place because of the interest rate. This is an example of the factor as the pestle element. Now, if you look at option 1, it says technological. And if you look at option B, the option is economic. It's definitely not a physical element. And it doesn't seem to be environmental. So those 2 don't seem to be the options. The only 2 that it really could be is possibly A or B. Now, they don't speak about any kind of machinery or any kind of equipment. And so when you see the interest rate, you know that we cannot control the interest rate, and this is an economic factor. So the answer here for this question is the economic factor or element or component. Hopefully that one was clear enough. Remember that each question in the multiple choice section of your paper will be worth 2 marks. Then if we move to question 1.1.3, Penflex Ltd has sold some of their assets to improve their cash flow. This business strategy is known as. Now here, learners, it's very important for you to go through your topic business strategies, and remember that you get various kinds of strategies. You get intensive strategies, defensive strategies. So you really need to know your types of strategies well. So we get liquidation, which is quite extreme. We get retrenchment, we get divestiture, and we get diversification. Now again, we need to look for some options that are possibly not the answer. Doesn't sound as if the business is busy with diversification, so we rule that one out. It doesn't sound like they are talking about, or they don't mention anything about letting some of the employees go, which is retrenchment because of operational reasons. And so we are only left with 2 extreme options. These are usually the very defensive strategies or defensive strategies. And so here we've got liquidation and divestiture. But they don't say they are selling the entire business, which is usually when liquidation happens. So the only possible answer here is divestiture, because this is what happens when the business takes on the strategy. So divestiture is when we sell some of our assets, and this then obviously improves the cash flow to the business. Again, a reminder that this is worth 2 marks. If we look at question 1.1.4, this act prevents unfair marketing practices. Your answers here: Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Consumer Protection Act, Labor Relations Act, and the National Credit Act. Now remember, if we look at the question, they talk about an act that deals with marketing, and you know that marketing is directed at a consumer. But first, before we do that, let's rule out the options that it cannot be. So it cannot be the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, because that would be talking about some kind of employee-employer. Again, also the labor or the conditions of work. And then if we look at question C, or option C rather, Labor Relations Act, that talks about the relationship between the employee and the employer. So that also doesn't sound like an option. So we eliminate A and C, and we are left with B and D. Now again, as I mentioned earlier, marketing is directed at a consumer. So this act prevents unfair marketing practices, and who would we want to be protecting here? Definitely the consumer. So the answer here is B, and then we rule out obviously then question or option D. Hopefully that one also makes sense. Let's move to question 1.1.5. It was easy for Moody's Roadhouse to acquire a trading license. This refers to as an element of Porter's 5 forces. Now again, grade 12s, just a reminder that you really need to know your 5 forces. Now, they talk about Moody's Roadhouse, and that's definitely a business, and they talk about the ability to acquire a trading license. So, are they talking about a supplier or anything that is affecting the supplier? No. So we ruled that one out. Are they talking about a buyer? No, not really, because they're still talking about a business, but just obtaining a license. So we are either talking about the threat of substitution or substitute products, or we are talking about the threats or barriers for new entrants to the market. So if we look at the question again, it was easy for Moody's Roadhouse to acquire a trading license. So that to me implies that this business is now entering the market because they are obtaining a trading license so they can start the business. So then it would not be threat of substitution or substitute product, but the answer would then be threats or barriers for new entrants to the market. If we look at then our second question or second set of questions, we look at 5 questions here. So usually you have your word box or your pick a word or pick a term questions, type questions, and it's important to note your grade 12, that there are 10 options. That's why I made a mistake there. So we have 10 options here. So grade 12s, this can be quite confusing when you have 10 options. But once again, there is a method for you to answer the questions and for you to make this a lot simpler as you move through the questions. So, exclusive clothing manufacturers have applied the vertical integration strategy by taking over trendy clothing retailers. So once again, dear learners, your business strategies are very important. You need to make sure that you know them well. Go and look at your past papers and see what common questions come up in the short questions of the papers for strategies. So if we look at our word box, we see that we have the option backward, Consumer Protection Act, PESTEL, opportunity, market development, forward, product development, National Credit Act, strength, and SWOT. Now, if you know your strategies really well, then you will know there that backward and forward is the option. So you have forward and backward, and you will see that I have now indicated that forward integration is the answer and backward is not an option. And the reason I've done that is so that you can see that there is one correct answer and one incorrect answer for each question. So as you move forward, I would, as a learner, I would scratch out forward and backward now from my word box. Also important, learners, you must remember to copy directly from the word box. So you cannot leave out a word or misspell the word, or sometimes misspelling does happen and it's sometimes not as obvious because it's maybe just a letter. But very important, dear learners, please try and copy as correctly as possible because learners lose marks for not copying correctly. For example, if you look at the option Consumer Protection Act, if a learner just writes the word consumer or only writes Protection Act, that is not the answer. They must use the words Consumer Protection Act because the answer is given to you. If we look at the next question, 1.2.2, Fairways Consultants compiles a analysis to investigate the reasons for poor management in the business. Now, this again seems like a technique, an analysis technique that the business would use. We know that we have we have a SWOT analysis, we have Porter's 5 forces, and we also have our PESTEL analysis. So remember that each one is linked to an environment. And here they talk about compiles an analysis to investigate the reasons for poor management in the business. So when we talk about in the business, we know that we are talking about a specific environment. So that would be the micro environment. So the micro environments analysis tool is the SWOT analysis. So again there, please note it does not say PESTEL analysis and SWOT analysis in the word box. It only says SWOT and PESTEL, and so your answer is SWOT, and we scratch out the option PESTEL. You do not have to indicate this over here. I am just showing you that there is one correct answer and one incorrect answer for each question. So you then now scratch out SWOT and PESTEL from your word box as well. The owner of Lekker Bed and Breakfast identified a or an when Freedom Bed and Breakfast closed down. Once again, you have now scratched out 4 options, and as you move through the questions, you'll now see that your options become less and less, and it also then reduces the amount of confusion while you're sitting in that exam venue. So let's look at our options. The owner of Lekker Bed and Breakfast identified a or an when Freedom Bed and Breakfast closed down. It's not about the acts, I don't think. It's not about product or market development. Options here, possibly, opportunity, or strength. So yes, you need to know your SWOT analysis well as well. And it would appear that the other bed and breakfast closed down, and this would not be a strength of the business because this is an external situation for the business. So that would then mean that the answer is opportunity and not strength. Remember that we talk about external and internal factors when we talk about our SWOT analysis, and strengths and weaknesses are internal factors for a business, and opportunities and threats are external factors for the SWOT analysis. So anything happening outside of your business. So the answer there would be opportunity. And then we look at Mackey, or the next question, 1.2.4. Mackey Enterprises implemented missing word there, as an intensive strategy when they opened a second branch in another city. So here again, we need to know our strategies really well, learners, and here we need to look at our intensive strategies. So if you look at your notes, you have market development there, and you have product development, and here they are talking about opening a second branch in another city. So you talk about market development or product development. They are not specifically mentioning anything about the product. They are only talking about opening a second branch. So remember, if you have a second branch, you're now accessing more people. More people means market, or your target market increases. So here the answer is then market development and not product development. So I have just highlighted the incorrect ones there, but remember, we are just removing our options there. So let me just remove those two there as well. And then we only have two answers left, because now everything else has been removed. And so 1.2.5 forces businesses to disclose more information about their products and processes. And the answer here, again, if we look at the question, forces businesses to disclose more information about their products and processes, the answer here is we want to protect our consumer. So this act forces businesses to disclose more information about their products and processes so that we can keep our consumer safe. So we reduce or remove now those two options there, and you can see that you have systematically moved your way through all of the options. Right, if we move on to the last question of our shorter questions or section A questions, we have our match the columns. So we have column A and column B, and we have options: competitive rivalry for 1.3.1, concentric diversification, market penetration, national credit regulator, and the SWOT analysis. Now, learners, I must be honest, this is extremely confusing because all of the answers look as if they could be the answer to the question. So here you really need to look carefully. Now, the answers are actually highlighted already and they are in bold. But what I need you to focus on is also the fact that here there are also 10 options. So A to J, 10 options in column B. You have 5 questions, which means that you have a question, and for every question there is an answer and also a distractor. So once you start using these methods, this section of the paper goes a little bit faster and also reduces the confusion for you. So let's look at our answers. If we look at competitive rivalry, okay, so I have highlighted that one in yellow. The answer for competitive rivalry would be other businesses selling similar products. Now, if we look at a distractor for that, new businesses that are selling similar products entering the market for the first time. That could be considered almost another option there for market penetration as well. But just remember that there is one answer and one distractor. If we look at concentric diversification, again here we need to know our strategies really well. I have highlighted that in blue. The answer for concentric diversification, if we look at our notes, remember that concentric diversification, if you look at your core notes, the business adds a new product or a service that is related to existing products and which will appeal to new customers. Or we have another bullet where it says occurs when a business wants to increase its product range and markets. So if we look at our options that we have here, I think in your notes there might be a little bit of a typo here with the word markets. It might say products, but it occurs when a business wants to increase its product range and markets. That's one of the answers for concentric diversification. A distractor could be occurs when a business acquires a business that is at the same production stage but offers a different product. So that is not an answer. If we look at market penetration, I have in a pinky purple color over there. And market penetration, again, we need to know our strategies very well. And market penetration is one of our strategies. So we talk about market penetration, and our options in our notes is new products penetrate an existing market at a low price until it's well known to the customers, and then the prices increase. It's a growth strategy where businesses focus on selling existing products to existing markets. And another bullet focuses on gaining a larger share of the market by reducing prices to increase sales or increasing advertising and promotion. If we look at our answer is businesses focus on selling existing products to existing markets, and so at times they will do this at a lower price. The distractor for that one is possibly business aims to sell its existing products to a new market, and that is not the answer over there. So if you start looking at all of the options, they all start looking like the same answer. So once you start eliminating the answers that are not possible, you reduce then the options for the last two questions. National Credit Regulator, we talk about that when we speak about our National Credit Act. And so there are compliance requirements from businesses with regards to the National Credit Regulator when businesses are offering products and services on credit. And our our answer is already highlighted, but we also need to identify the distractor. So the option here would be G, requires businesses that offer loans to submit annual compliance reports. So remember, when we talk about the National Credit Regulator, we must remember that businesses need to also comply. So they are required then, in this case here, to submit annual compliance reports. The distractor for this one is that the National Credit Regulator does not require businesses to display information on their packaging. So remember here, the focus would be anything regarding credit. So they talk about loans there. Then our last one, which is probably the easiest one or easiest option to identify here, our SWOT analysis. Remember our analysis tools that we have for the micro, market, and macro environment. SWOT analysis is internal inside the business. And remember, I earlier, with the previous question, I said that SWOT analysis, strengths and weaknesses are internal factors in the business. So that would be your option there for F. I have it highlighted in green, and the distractor for that one would be identifies the strength of the business in the market environment. We know that for market environment, the analysis tool is the the Porter's analysis tool, or Porter's 5 forces tool. And that's that for question 1, and I will be back for question 2.